Have you ever wondered what happens when faith, power, and ambition collide on a massive scale? For nearly 200 years, that's exactly what happened in a series of conflicts we now call the Crusades. But this wasn't just a simple story of knights in shining armor. It was a complex, messy, and world-changing saga that still echoes today. So grab your metaphorical sword and shield, because we're about to journey back in time to uncover the real history of the Crusades. It all starts in the late 11th century. Europe was a patchwork of feudal kingdoms, all under the spiritual authority of the Pope in Rome. Meanwhile, the Middle East was a vibrant and powerful center of the Islamic world. For centuries, Christian pilgrims had traveled to the Holy Land, to places like Jerusalem, to visit sites central to their faith. For the most part, these journeys were peaceful. But that was about to change. The catalyst was a desperate plea for help. In 1095, the Byzantine Emperor Alexios I Komnenos sent envoys to Pope Urban II. His empire, the last remnant of the old Roman Empire, was under threat from the Seljuk Turks, who had been expanding their territory and had already defeated the Byzantine army at the pivotal Battle of Manzikert. Alexios was hoping for a few hundred well-trained mercenaries to help push them back. What he got was something far, far bigger. Pope Urban II saw a golden opportunity. He wasn't just thinking about helping the Byzantines. He saw a chance to unite the fractious Christian lords of Europe under his leadership, to channel their constant fighting outwards, and to reclaim the holy city of Jerusalem for Christendom. At the Council of Clermont in France, Urban delivered one of the most influential speeches in history. He described the alleged sufferings of Christians in the East and called upon the knights and commoners of Europe to take up the cross and march to the Holy Land. He promised them remission of their sins, a spiritual reward that was incredibly appealing in a deeply religious age. The crowd's response was electric, a thunderous cry of Deus vult, God wills it. And so, the First Crusade was born. But before the main army of knights and nobles could even set out, a wave of common folk, led by charismatic preachers like Peter the Hermit, surged east in what's known as the People's Crusade. Ill-equipped and undisciplined, this first wave was ultimately a disaster, but it showed the incredible power of the Pope's call. Soon after, the official armies of the First Crusade departed. These were led by powerful nobles like Godfrey of Bouillon, Raymond of Toulouse, and Bohemond of Taranto. This wasn't a unified army, but a collection of rival forces, each with their own ambitions. After a long and brutal journey, filled with sieges, starvation, and incredible hardship, they arrived before the walls of Jerusalem in the summer of 1099. The siege was fierce, and when the city finally fell, the aftermath was horrific. The Crusaders, fueled by religious fervor and the brutalities of their long campaign, enacted a terrible massacre of the city's Muslim and Jewish inhabitants. It was a dark chapter that would poison relations for centuries. With the city secured, the Crusaders established 4 new states in the region, known as the Crusader states, including the Kingdom of Jerusalem. They had achieved their primary goal, but holding on to it would prove to be another matter entirely. The establishment of these Christian kingdoms in the heart of the Islamic world was, unsurprisingly, not taken lightly. For the next few decades, there was constant low-level warfare. But things escalated when the city of Edessa, one of the Crusader states, fell to the Muslim leader Zengi in 1144. This news sent shockwaves back to Europe, prompting the call for a second crusade. This time, the crusade was led by 2 of Europe's most powerful monarchs, King Louis VII of France and King Conrad III of Germany. It was bigger and better organized, but ultimately, it was a dismal failure. Poor coordination, internal rivalries, and a disastrous decision to besiege the friendly city of Damascus led to a humiliating retreat. The Second Crusade achieved nothing, and left the Crusader states even more vulnerable than before. The tide was truly turning. In the latter half of the 12th century, a new unifying figure emerged in the Muslim world, Salah al-Din, known in the West as Saladin. A brilliant military strategist and a respected leader, Saladin united the fractured Muslim forces of Egypt and Syria under his rule. His goal was clear: to drive the Crusaders out of the Holy Land. In 1187, at the Battle of Hattin, Saladin's forces lured the main army of the Kingdom of Jerusalem into a waterless trap and utterly destroyed it. It was a catastrophic defeat for the Crusaders. With their army gone, city after city fell to Saladin, culminating in his recapture of Jerusalem itself. In stark contrast to the Crusader conquest 88 years earlier, Saladin's takeover of the city was remarkably humane. He allowed many of the Christian inhabitants to ransom themselves and leave peacefully. The fall of Jerusalem prompted the Third Crusade, perhaps the most famous of them all. This was the Crusade of Kings, pitting Saladin against a trio of Europe's most legendary rulers: Emperor Frederick Barbarossa of the Holy Roman Empire, King Philip II of France, and King Richard II of England, better known as Richard the Lionheart. It started with its own share of disaster. Frederick Barbarossa drowned while crossing a river in Anatolia, and much of his massive army went home. Then, after successfully capturing the port city of Acre, King Philip of France had a falling out with Richard and returned to Europe. This left Richard the Lionheart as the sole commander of the Christian forces. What followed was a remarkable contest of wills between two legendary figures, Richard and Saladin. They were fierce rivals on the battlefield, but they also held a mutual respect for one another's skill and chivalry. Richard won several key victories and marched his army to within sight of Jerusalem, but he knew he couldn't hold the city even if he took it. In the end, they negotiated a truce. The Crusaders would hold onto a thin strip of coastline, and Christian pilgrims would be guaranteed safe passage to visit Jerusalem. The Third Crusade failed to retake the Holy City, but it did ensure the survival of a Crusader presence for another century. If the first three Crusades were about the Holy Land, the Fourth Crusade was where everything went completely off the rails. Called by Pope Innocent III at the turn of the 13th century, the plan was to attack the heart of Saladin's former empire, Egypt, and use it as a bargaining chip for Jerusalem. But there was a problem. The Crusaders didn't have enough money to pay the Venetians for the ships they needed. What happened next was a series of bizarre and tragic diversions. To pay their debt, the Crusaders agreed to help the Venetians capture the Christian city of Zara. This act earned them excommunication from the Pope. Then, a deposed Byzantine prince promised them a fortune if they would help him retake his throne in Constantinople, the greatest Christian city in the world. The Crusaders, desperate for cash, agreed. They succeeded in placing him on the throne, but he couldn't pay what he had promised. Tensions boiled over, and in 1204, the crusading army did the unthinkable. They turned on their fellow Christians and brutally sacked Constantinople. For 3 days, they looted the city's incredible wealth and destroyed priceless works of art and literature. The Fourth Crusade never even made it to the Holy Land. Instead, it fatally wounded the Byzantine Empire and created a deep and lasting schism between the Catholic West and the Orthodox East. Even after this disaster, the crusading ideal didn't die out completely, but it changed. The Fifth Crusade was another failed attempt to conquer Egypt. The Sixth Crusade was strange. The Holy Roman Emperor, Frederick II, who was also excommunicated at the time, actually managed to regain Jerusalem not through fighting, but through a 10-year treaty he negotiated with the Egyptian Sultan. It was diplomacy, not war, that won the day. But this was only a temporary reprieve. Jerusalem fell again just over a decade later. 2 more major crusades were led by the pious King Louis IX of France, both of which ended in failure. By the late 13th century, the Crusader spirit was fading. The lords of Europe had other concerns, and the Crusader states were weak and isolated. One by one, their last strongholds fell, until 1291, when the city of Acre, the last Crusader capital, was captured. The Crusader presence in the Holy Land was over. So what was the legacy of this 200-year epic? The Crusades failed in their main objective to permanently hold the Holy Land. They created deep-seated animosity between Christians and Muslims, and between Western and Eastern Christians. But they also had profound, often unintended, consequences. They stimulated trade between Europe and the East, introducing new goods, ideas, and technologies to the West. The massive financing required for these expeditions led to the development of more sophisticated financial systems in Europe. They also expanded the worldview of many Europeans, even as they reinforced certain prejudices. The story of the Crusades is a powerful reminder that history is never simple. It's not a tale of good versus evil, but a complex tapestry of faith, greed, ambition, brutality, and occasional surprising moments of chivalry and understanding. It shaped the world we live in today in ways we are still trying to understand. Thanks for joining us on this journey back in time. If you found this dive into the Crusades fascinating, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history. Let us know in the comments which historical event you'd like us to explore next. See you in the next video.